Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to the information session for our newly launched Regional Energy Advisor Training Program. So I am Kayla Fayon. I am the manager for the Energy Advisor Program here at Indigenous Clean Energy. I'm a Métis woman located in Fishing Lake Métis Settlement in Treaty 6 traditional territory. Also here with me is Ian Skolton, our program director, who can introduce himself and tell you a little bit more about ICE.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining today. Really excited to be sharing some more information about the program and hopefully answer some of the questions that you all have. As Kayla mentioned, I'm Ian Skolton. I'm located here in Treaty 7 territory in Canmore, Alberta. So for those of you who aren't familiar, ICE, we're a national nonprofit organization that is Indigenous led and governed, and everything we do is about building capacity in Indigenous communities to empower people to pursue clean energy projects, whether that's wind, solar, hydro, renewable energy, or energy efficiency, like we're going to talk about today. We have a really wide range of programs, everything from the 2020 Catalyst program, which has been around for 6-7 years now, to some newer programs like Generation Power, which offers internship stipends for Indigenous youth to get to start pursuing careers in the clean energy sector, to work on the international stage through the Global Hub, where we've brought together Indigenous people from across Canada to present to international parties at the Conference of the Parties, so the COP27 that happened just last year in Egypt. And most importantly, and near and dear to my heart, some of our energy efficiency programs like this Energy Efficiency Energy Advisor Training Program that we're going to talk a bit about today. Yeah, great. Pass back to you, Kayla.
If I can get it back to the last slide. There we go. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the goals of our program, the what, the where, and the whens of the training that will be delivered, and answer any questions you might have. By the end of the session, you should be able to understand what an energy advisor is, how our program works, why you should apply, and how to apply. We'll pause between topics and answer questions, which you can add to the Q&A or the chat. And at the end, we'll leave time for any remaining questions. So with that said, first we'll start with, if there are no questions, I'll just see if I have, okay, we're good. The first thing we'll talk about is what an NRCan registered energy advisor is. So an NRCan registered energy advisor is licensed to provide an impartial energy efficiency rating to new and existing homes. They can evaluate existing houses for their energy performance and provide recommendations to improve energy efficiency and comfort, and also model new houses to verify if they qualify for home labeling programs such as Net Zero. In order to apply for many grants and programs, the homes must be evaluated by a registered energy advisor. So Natural Resources Canada, or NRCan, is the body that administers the policies and procedures around the EnerGuide rating system. They ensure that registered energy advisors maintain their standards in energy audits across Canada, are non-biased in their measures and recommendations, and have a deep understanding of energy performance in housing. So I'll pause there to see if there are any questions so far on what an energy advisor is. Just have people introducing themselves. Okay.
And I'll just say, you should see a chat button down at the bottom. So feel free to use the chat for any sort of introductions if you want to introduce yourself there. And then just use the Q&A for questions that you have that are ongoing. And you can put those in the Q&A. Oh, the chat is disabled. Okay, good to know. We will try to work on fixing that. But yeah, any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A. We can answer them, and we'll mark you if you want to answer live. But we have a question, it looks like, from Drew Dorian. So Drew, I'll just unmute you here. You should be able to ask your question now. All right, maybe not. We do have a question from Gina Simon asking about registering homes with NRCan. So what we just mentioned there is that there are labeling systems, so you can have a house registered as a net zero home, for instance, which means it uses as much energy as it produces. And to do that, it has to be verified, and that's a service that the energy advisors can do for a community, and then it'll have that label and be recognized in that way. Not all homes need to be registered with NRCan.
Will the program be available in French? This is just something we were talking about. It will be delivered completely in English for this round.
Yes, something we really hope to work strongly towards. Right.
Yeah. Okay. That's all the questions for our first slide. We can get into what a service organization is. Okay, what existing programs are you working on in Northwest Territories? Is this question about our other programs or the energy advisor?
Maybe we can get into that. We'll touch on that a bit later as we talk about some of the other organizations that are working in this space.
What time does this run until? So we scheduled for an hour. The presentation itself is less than 30 minutes, might be a little bit more with questions, and we'll leave time at the end for more questions. Okay, so what is a service organization? After evaluation, each audit file gets reviewed by a quality assurance specialist and gets submitted to NRCan once completed, but the files can only be submitted by a licensed service organization. A service organization is the umbrella under which energy advisors operate. They are essential to the registration process. They are licensed to use the EnerGuide rating system and are responsible for ensuring that energy advisors and quality assurance specialists adhere to the standards set out by Natural Resources Canada. Any questions? Okay. So why do we need energy advisors? We need energy advisors to help give guidance on how to make our homes more efficient and implement best energy efficiency practices. We also need more qualified energy advisors right now to meet the increased demand for energy audits. One of the reasons there's an increase in demand is because national funding programs that provide grants and loans to homeowners for energy efficient upgrades require an audit to be completed first by a registered energy advisor. So while there is a general shortage for qualified energy advisors across Canada, the inaccessibility to this expertise is even more noticeable in Indigenous and rural communities, especially the lack of Indigenous energy advisors who understand the unique needs of our communities. So by creating this capacity, more Indigenous communities will have access to the energy efficiency expertise that is needed to make decisions around housing that'll lead to better, healthier housing conditions, with reduced utility bills through energy efficiency actions. Any questions there? Okay.
Just a couple of questions.
I will pass. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I'll talk about this. Just a couple of questions that came in the Q&A. So Nicholas asked about a registry of service organizations. So I'm going to put this in the response there, but on NRCan, Natural Resources Canada website, if you just go into Google and search NRCan service organizations, it should be one of the first links you find. They do have a list of all the service organizations, and you can search by postal code to pull up a list of, I think it's by postal code or region, to pull up a list of service organizations in your area. And connected to that, Richard asked about service organizations that are dedicated to working with First Nations groups. There's a pretty broad range of service organizations out there. as it stands, I don't think there's any just Indigenous specific, though we actually just got off a call with one organization that's working towards getting their service organization designation, and they are an Indigenous business. But there are definitely some service organizations that do a lot of work with Indigenous communities. So that's about the lay of the land as it stands right now. All right. So if you've had a chance to look through some of the materials about the Energy Advisor program, you'll see that we're talking about this kind of regional approach. And so what that means from our perspective is trying to have people go through the program who work with or are associated with regional organizations, regional Indigenous organizations. These might be things like tribal councils or technical service groups who are already providing services and supports to a collective of communities. And the reason that we've taken this approach is, as we'll touch on later, we have capacity to support 15 individuals through our program right now. And by taking a regional approach, it allows us to get people into spaces where they can support multiple communities with this training and be able to provide greater impact as it stands. That being said, we aren't exclusively only going to support people from regional organizations. If you're coming from a community and are very interested in this training, please do still reach out to us. And we can talk about fits with this program, or as we mentioned earlier, there are other organizations across Canada who have Energy Advisor training programs on the go that are more tailored specifically to individual communities or individual people. So that's kind of our take and our lens that we're approaching this program with. Happy to answer any questions about that, or you can put them into the chat there. And yeah, a couple of questions coming out in the chat, which we will get to a lot of these around specific training for Indigenous communities, what's going to be covered. So these are all great questions. Keep them coming, and we'll make sure that they all get answered at a minimum by the end of the call today.
All right, thanks, Ian. So now we could get into who should apply. So as Ian just mentioned, with the regional approach, we're looking for candidates who are either already working with an organization that supports Indigenous housing on a regional level, or an employee who will be brought on specifically to fill that Energy Advisor role. So we are looking for candidates who have a valid driver's license and transportation, as once they start completing their probationary files and delivering audits, they will need to get around to the communities that they serve with an auditing kit, which is approximately the size of a hockey bag, but that kit may grow as they add their own optional equipment. It is also, of course, important that they commit to completing the training and staying current to maintain their registration after training. So we've listed here some competencies that will increase their likelihood of successfully passing the exams. This include basics like computer skills and geometry, and often individuals with a background in housing construction or engineering fare the best on the exams. So while those are great skills to have, if you feel like you're missing one or two, we want to provide that support and encourage you to apply anyway. Also, if you're an applicant that isn't associated with a regional organization, or if you're a regional organization that doesn't have the right applicant, or you're not quite sure, just reach out to us. We can discuss it. We may find a solution, such as making a connection for you, finding a different training program, or assuring you that you do fit the criteria. You can always contact Ian or myself if you have any questions about that. So to become an Energy Advisor, the process is the same for everyone across Canada. In order to complete what's called your registration as an Energy Advisor, Natural Resources Canada requires Energy Advisors to write 2 exams and then become affiliated with a service or organization where they complete practice audits or probationary files, as they're called, under the supervision of an already registered Energy Advisor. So participants will be prepared for those exams through a series of workshops that teach the competencies that are required to pass. We'll start with building science and learn about topics such as housing as a system, energy efficient construction, building envelopes, and HVAC systems. We'll also cover the HOT 2000 modeling program, which will introduce the energy advisors to using the software prescribed by Natural Resources Canada for creating energy evaluation files. And then we'll go into foundation level and energy advisor level exam prep to talk about exam writing strategies, review, and practicing applying the learnings. Training will also be supplemented by our Indigenous Enhanced Workshop Series, regionally specific circles, study groups, and mentorship. So the standard, like fundamental energy advisor training process usually focuses on a house by house basis. And we know that Indigenous communities don't fit that mold. So we've designed this part of the program to teach energy advisors how to have more of an impact on the communities that they're serving. So while the fundamental training might teach more about the technical side and equips them with the knowledge to complete one, it doesn't equip with the knowledge and skills that give the EAs an understanding of how to apply the energy auditing process effectively. So through these workshop series, participants will learn such things as how to shift the focus from energy efficiency to healthy homes, how to best support Indigenous communities, best practices for communication, and data collection strategies for communities versus the data collection strategy you might use on a single home. We'll also break participants up into circles based on their location to learn from professionals about best energy efficiency practices in their region. They will also have the opportunity to connect and learn from each other through scheduled drop-in study groups. And finally, they will learn hands-on through mentorship with their paired service organization. As the final part of the registration process to become an EA, the EA must register with a service organization and complete probationary files. As mentioned earlier, the service organization is the most important piece in completing this registration. So the probationary files will include or will comprise of 7. They'll observe 2, perform 2 under the supervision, and then perform 3 independently. If the supervising energy advisor doesn't feel that they are confident in delivering those audits, then they may ask for more, and then they approve the registration. So some service organizations will also train their new energy advisors on their data collection template and other materials specific to their organization. Once the auditor has completed all the requirements, they can then complete their registration with NRCan. However, so even after they are registered, an energy advisor must remain affiliated with a service organization to be able to submit files and maintain that registration. So if your regional organization is not a service organization, that means you'll have to have a relationship with a service organization going forward. Service organizations will do this in turn for a fee, which would be discussed between the 2 organizations. So we will have a network of service organizations to pair up the energy advisor with their right fit, and ideally after training, they'll maintain that affiliation. And if you already have a relationship with an organization, you can of course work with them instead. Okay. So thanks to our funders, there are no costs to the participants or the regional organizations to take part. The program will cover costs which include workshop fees, exam fees, travel costs for in-person sessions, blower door and audit kit, which is the essential tools an energy advisor needs to complete an audit. Due to our funding, we can't give them to individuals, but we can provide them to regional organizations conditionally, contingent on the completion of training. There are also participant stipends and supports available for barriers such as childcare, internet access, and more. What it doesn't include is wages or training allowance. So we have created the training schedule so participants can continue to work for their regional organization while taking the training. So if additional support is needed, we want to be able to provide those. This could include additional tutoring if they're struggling in a subject and would be assessed on a case-by-case basis. Participants will also gain access to a dedicated space on the ICE network to share knowledge and resources amongst each other. And if wage supports are needed, there are subsidy programs available for youth, such as ICE's own Generation Power program or CMHC's Housing Internship program. The program in turn requires that participants commit to completing the training and have the ability to travel. This is necessary for our program to participate in the 1 week of in-person training in Ottawa. Access to reliable transportation, again, need to be able to get around to the communities, to houses with a kit to do the work. And then computer for training and also to do the HOT 2000 modeling, access to reliable internet to access the online courses. And for virtual training sessions, participants will need a computer that has internet access, PDF reader, webcam, and microphone. This takes us to our training schedule. So we have put together over 100 hours of workshops, virtual sessions, and in-person training to take place throughout this year. The training was designed so you can continue to work, but still paced enough that participants won't lose momentum and it won't be overwhelming. We have broken it into manageable pieces with the work-life balance in mind. The courses will be taken as a collective, but the practical training will depend on the service organization. We'll start in April through May, meeting 2 times a week to set the foundation with building science and foundation level exam prep. That will take us into June, where we will have scheduled weekly drop-in sessions in preparation for writing the foundation level exam. July through September, we will resume meeting for workshops for modeling and regional circle sessions 1 time a week. Taking us into October, where we will meet for Indigenous Enhanced workshop series leading up to a 1-person or one week in-person training in Ottawa. So generally any online workshops or drop-in sessions will take place on Tuesdays or Thursdays from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern time, so fall within the workday across all time zones, as this is a national program. So like I said, most of the training will be taken together as a group up until they go on to their individual mentorship pathways with their service organization. So you can apply now up until February 15th on our ICE website. The link is right here. I think we could link it in the chat too. We'll be scheduling, conducting interviews as applications come in to assess for fit within the program. Notifications will be going out early March, and onboarding will take place at the end of March and lead right into training. Now, are there questions that we haven't answered that we can answer live?
Yeah, perfect. And I'm hoping that I've made the chat accessible to everyone. Hopefully you can all see that there. Yeah, we have a couple of questions here. So Richard Hall asked if we can incorporate these concepts into new construction of multi and single family home. And yeah, that's part of the role that the energy advisor can play, is they can provide that guidance and support to new constructions and new builds using their energy modeling and their awareness of building science and approaches. This is something that's really important, why this idea of the regional approaches is exciting to us, because if you are a community that depends on your tribal council or depends on a technical service group, they can provide this guidance to help shape how new homes are built. And I had something else to say, but it's totally slipped my mind. So yes, definitely this can apply to new builds as well. And then Chantel asked a question about the funding indicates supports for homeowners. How can this funding be applied to First Nations if many do not own their homes due to Crown land designation? So that part really varies on the funding for doing the actual work. I will say that programs like the Greener Homes Grant, they've been working to update and revise. They got a lot of feedback around how the original offering of that program was really not well suited for communities, but they have since updated it and have an Indigenous specific application process where communities can apply for multiple homes at a time, and that funding will flow through to communities. So it's that sort of Crown land ownership piece isn't an impact there. It can be done through the community. But yeah, it's one of the barriers that many communities face, and that's part of what we want to talk about within the Indigenous enhanced training is how energy advisors can help communities work through those challenges. And then Kayla, if you want to answer this one about April asked if the virtual drop-ins, if they're virtual drop-in sessions.
Yes, with the exception of the 1 week in Ottawa in October, they are all virtual drop-in sessions. That also answers Christy's question. The travel would be late October.
Perfect. And then we had a couple of questions asked about if you need to be Indigenous to apply for this program. So our priority is having Indigenous people become the energy advisors. That being said, we know for certain organizations, they have a really strong non-Indigenous person who's been with them for a long time and is really committed to working as an ally and contributing in that sense, and is committed for the long term to that organization. We welcome those people to apply too, with the recognition that, again, priority goes to Indigenous people to make sure that that training and that development is there. But we understand that for some organizations, they need this capacity, and the people that they have in their organization, the person who might be best suited to take this training is not Indigenous, and we understand that reality too. Any other questions that people have out there? I see some good activity in the chat. I'm glad that worked. They always hide the right button that you need to push. Yeah, Susan, great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Kayla.
I mean, like, ideally, you'll have someone in mind. If you don't, I think reach out to us instead of just like applying as the organization, and then we can have that conversation.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, these roles, becoming an energy advisor, this could be a full-time role if you want to work and go to multiple communities to support them in doing the audits and guiding that process. But it might also be sort of a part-time thing that's just as part of your job. We'll put the contact information and the URL. We just got a question from Perry Lynn Toulouse. Kayla, if you want to answer that, and I will grab all those links.
So for Indigenous organizations, communities, who do we contact when completing an application? So if you are the applicant and you have an idea, like you have your organization, you have no questions around it, then you can just go directly to our application link, which Ian's going to post in the chat. But if you feel like you don't fit some of that criteria and you want to talk about your application, then you would contact myself. And again, Ian's going to post our contact information in the chat. After the training, is there a reliable space to work on a program, or where would we work at home due to organization space availability?
think that would really depend on your situation. So if you already have already work for an organization and they have an office space for you, great. If not, then yeah, you have to figure out if it's something you can manage at home and have the space to do at home. You know, you need a computer to be able to put all your paperwork in and start doing the modeling, and a space to store the any sort of equipment that you'll use for the audits. So the space part and where you work isn't something that we can answer on our end. It would be up to each individual person. Yeah. Any other questions about the program, about the role of energy advisors, service organizations, anything like that? We really want to make sure that you all have a really solid base and understanding of the program and what this opportunity is, so that you can either consider applying for yourself or bring it to your communities, to your organizations, to figure out who would make the most sense. Yeah.
Okay, got a few more questions. So the Chromebooks, we talked about participant supports. So if computer access is a barrier, then you can access participant supports to access the computer. So there seem to be no service organizations in Quebec. What do you do in this case? So you can look up service organizations through an NRCan database. We will also have a network that we can access. Some are nationally based, and you'll be able to work with them even if they aren't located in Quebec. We hope to have a pretty good geographical spread. So if someone does not work for a community or Indigenous organization but wants to, can they apply? Yes, they can. I would say just give us as much information on like their location and whatever, and hopefully we can find the right connection for them. Can you please run through the week schedule very fast? Mentioned Tuesday and Thursday. Okay, I can go back to that really quickly. So what we would be looking at for the schedule is building science and foundation level exam prep would take place for like weekly on every Tuesday and Thursday from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern time. Drop-in sessions would be about an hour and a half long weekly on a Tuesday or a Thursday. Because it's going to happen during the summertime, I understand like schedules, holidays, all that. Modeling in regional circles are only going to happen one time. I don't think we've decided if it's going to be a Tuesday or a Thursday, but like generally all of our workshop pieces, our virtual workshop pieces will take place in that 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern time slot on a Tuesday or Thursday. And then it'll be late October for the in-person workshop.
Yeah, do that last week there. We had someone ask about sharing, passing on programs so other communities are aware of these for their needs. Yes, definitely. Please share the information, and even if you choose to become an energy advisor and are working in multiple communities, that is, you know, the more the merrier. The more we can share and get that information out there so that more people can benefit and advance and improve the quality of homes. That's what's most important. Yeah. And Richard, your point there in the chat around regional challenges, definitely agree. That's part of why we have these regional circles that you'll see on the timeline here. The aim with those regional circles are because when someone's going through the energy advisor training program, they're going to learn about all sorts of housing, and so they might be based on in your region on the west coast, but learning about housing in downtown Toronto. So we want to create these regional circles where people can really dig into what's going to work best, what are the learnings for where they're coming from. That's why we have those regional circles, to drive solutions and make sure that people are best equipped with the top solutions in their areas to overcome those challenges.
Okay, there's a good question in the chat about if there's a way to know an applicant's basic skills in math, computer geometry is strong enough to get through the training if they do not currently have knowledge in engineering or housing. So there are a list of what they call competencies available through NRCan that you can review. I guess one of the good things in Job Acts is that there are no real prerequisites for becoming an energy advisor. So hopefully if they get into the program and they're having trouble with one of the areas, that we can just support that. But as April said, yeah, there are packages and there are competencies. I think I could link or send to participants the document from NRCan.
Yeah, and yeah, April, it is a pretty involved testing process. You'll learn a lot. That's why a lot of people who come from a housing background tend to do a bit better, just because they already have some of this working knowledge. But that doesn't mean someone can't start from scratch. It'll just take a bit more work and a bit more dedication to study, to learn, to ask questions. And part of it is also preparing for the exams. We know the exams can be a big challenge for people. And this exam in particular is no different. So that's where some of the tutoring and the study groups that we're setting up will hopefully help people move through. And if someone has to write the exam more than once, we have some additional funds to be able to support that, to help as many people be successful as we can. Yeah, good question. So Susan in the chat has asked about funding the job. So it can be structured in a lot of different ways depending on who and where the person is coming from. As we said, our ideal candidate is someone who is already working for or is being hired on by an organization to help cover their salary. And then what they would do is they would, if you're going to go in and do audits in a community, yes, you would bill the community for whatever rate you deemed was appropriate. The service organization will charge for each kind of quality assurance in the submission. That's a fee that they determine and work with the energy advisory to figure out what's a fair number there. And so that's one way. If the person is going to work individually, then they'll figure out their rates to charge for the energy advising work that they're doing. Yeah, so hopefully that gets to the heart of your question there, Susan.
I also just real
Oh, go
quickly,
ahead.
I also
Yeah.
mentioned that there are a couple funding streams available for wage support for youth age 18 to 30. There might be more out there for like other groups, but so far what we found, we linked.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. In the Q&A, what housing standards example of a good and poor quality house can be worked on? Is there anything that can stop you from working with members of their community? There are, I do know NRCan has like standards for what an eligible home is. I don't specifically know what those standards are.
It's an example of a good and poor quality house that can be worked on. So there's two factors I would say that you'd want to consider, and part of this is working with communities housing managers to assess, the condition of the home. If the home has big holes in the wall or all the windows are broken, there's some obvious other work that needs to go on. But then really any home can have an energy assessment done to it by an energy advisor. And if that home has holes in the wall or windows that don't close, they'll be able to very quickly say that's going to be an issue. So there isn't a standard to my knowledge on that front. Yeah, so that would basically, you take all that input and turn that into what they call a renovation upgrade report, which would list out here the 5 or 6 actions that as an energy advisor you'd recommend they take on the home to improve the quality of that home from an energy efficiency perspective. And in terms of the follow-up question there around anything that can stop you from working with members of the community, again, that'll be really based on community policies around who can come in to work on homes, what ownership models they're using. So really depends on the community. Yeah, Kayla, do you want to answer that next question about if someone doesn't pass the exam?
Yeah, for sure. So people are going to fail the exam. It's going to happen. You can retake it. The exam costs approximately $160 to take each time. We factored in a little bit of a bumper for people to take it more than once. But I guess at some point we'll run out of funds and you can continue to take the exam, but we just might not be able to cover it.
Yeah, so then that question on the youth wage subsidy. So I'm going to grab the links to these 2 programs and put them in there so people can reference them. But yes, so these are 2 Indigenous youth support programs. And so the one is offered through Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC. And what they'll do funding up to 2 years of funding for a youth position. I'm not sure off the top of my head if they have to be a new employee or if it can go towards an existing employee. My sense of a lot of these programs is that it is ideally aimed at a new employee. And then the other one is actually a program that we offer here at ICE called Generation Power, which is a youth wage subsidy program. So we'll cover up to 80% of their costs while being employed at a community or at a tribal organization, as long as they're working on energy related matters. And so those links are being put in there where you can learn more about those programs.
They're both also linked on our webpage under additional supports.
Yes. Okay, and then just jumping back over the chat, it looks like Richard, great point out. So there are other organizations that are delivering similar energy advisor training on a more localized basis. So Richard talked about Keepers of the Circle. That is focused specifically on First Nations in Northern Ontario. We're happy, again, if the fit isn't right for our program, we're happy to connect you over to Keepers to see if that fit makes more sense. And then there's also one happening in the Northwest Territories, which I think is just getting underway. So you might still have time to connect if you're in Northwest Territories. And then there's also programs happening in BC up in the North Coast that aren't Indigenous specific, but trying to support people in the rural areas. Gina, to your question around budget set aside for the EA to be paid through. So the Greener Homes program does offer $600 per home to cover the cost of an energy audit. That $600 the community or the homeowner doesn't get until after they've done the work that's recommended in the report. So that energy advisor would have to be paid in advance. But then yes, the community could get reimbursed through the Greener Homes grant program. And April, your question around benefits to companies presenting or creating new positions in the REA sector. Yes, I mean, energy efficiency is only going to grow in importance across the country. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm a little biased in saying that this is like really critical. It can be such an important role for helping affect the health and durability of homes, but just generally in Canada, in the landscape that we're working in, with all the push towards net zero and some of the changes that are going to come out for homes when there's discussions around having each home have an energy label, that's going to require energy advisors. A lot of the new funding programs that are out there will require energy advisors to do that work. But just at a community level, so if you're working for a regional organization, communities are so keen to make improvements to their homes, and that's a big role that energy advisors can support with. So this can be a really major role to connect with, rather than having to pay outside consultants, outside energy advisors. This keeps that revenue within the Indigenous economy and builds up more expertise, gives more pathways for use, so they can see, oh, this is a new career pathway. So I see a ton of other benefits, and like we said, on the rebate front, there's going to be more and more funding programs that are out there that will require, whether it's energy assessments done before retrofits can happen, or if you're doing a new build, there are programs out there like some green infrastructure build projects where if the building or the homes can be certified as net zero, then you might get additional funding. All of these components are really going to just grow over the coming years, as long as we stay on the same path that we are. Question about youth. It does include, my understanding is that it does include up 30 years old. So between 18 and 30. So if you're 30, you're still in. Okay. And so Susan asked a question in the Q&A around servicing homes off reserve as well. Yes, definitely. So we use the term community, but we recognize there's a lot of Indigenous communities that live off reserve. I think I saw someone from AMA, the Aboriginal Housing Management Association in BC, that works solely with housing providers off reserve. And so, yeah, it doesn't have to be specific to an on-reserve community. Inuit communities, Métis communities, they're all welcome to apply and are able to use energy advisor work. And yes, it doesn't have to be community-owned buildings. They can be owned by community members. They can be owned privately. Okay.
There's a question on what funds are available to use in each community, and is there a limit of funds available for each region or community? If this question is about this program, for this round, we are looking at a good geographical spread of energy advisors across Canada. So we don't have a quota set for a certain community or group or region. We just want to get that good spread of good qualified energy advisors. If the question refers to like funding for retrofit programs, then that's more NRCan specific. And
yeah, NRCan or the various different provinces have funding available. You know, if you live in BC, there's a lot of different programs out there through Clean BC versus if you're in Saskatchewan, that province hasn't put a priority on providing funding for energy efficiency measures, so there's a bit less out there. But there are a lot of different federal funds available through NRCan. Like CMHC has some specific funding that might be more tailored towards infrastructure, but there's discussions around how to support housing if you're not on reserve. Federation of Canadian Municipalities has a lot of sustainable affordable housing fund out there. So there's different programs that are available, and we have some of those listed on the ICE network that you can access, and I will grab a link to that and put it in here.
So Gina asks, do we see this training continuing with ICE beyond this one run? Do you foresee even the EA trained in this program becoming trainers? So yes, of course, we hope that this training continues beyond this first cohort. Right now, we're focused on getting this process down, right? And then expanding beyond that. We would love to see EAs become further trained as either service organization managers, quality assurance specialists, or even branch out into other areas such as multi-unit residential buildings and other programs under the kind of energy advisor umbrella. So there's some comments on funding and challenges.
Yeah, and Joseph, that's really happy to hear how you've been trying to move this forward, and appreciate the challenges that you've been working through. This is part of where we see the benefits of the regional approach, being able to work with a regional organization where they have those relationships and are already going to be doing providing these services to communities, and they're working with 7 or 8 or 9 dedicated communities. But us saying that doesn't mean that it'll be all rainbows and sunshine. There'll still be communication and talking to leadership, talking to housing managers as part of what we'll cover through the enhanced training, is how to communicate the messaging and get people on board around not just doing the audits, but doing energy efficiency as a means to help improve the quality of homes.
Yeah.
See, we have,
okay, well,
yeah.
Do we have any more questions? Yeah, that takes us up to the end if there's no other questions.
Yeah. I will post Kayla's contact information again here at the end, so that you have that for if you want to follow up about anything that we covered today. We will be posting the recording here onto the ICE network and sending it out to all the registered attendees, hopefully through Zoom, but it'll all be there.
Yeah. Thank you both. Thanks everyone for attending. I hope it was informative and you got everything that you needed out of the session, but of course, reach out to me if there's anything else.
Thank you, everybody.